Hello, friends, and welcome back to another imperfect installment of this conversation of how. Hello, friends. I don't know if it just already went, it says it just started. Hello, welcome to another imperfect installment of this conversation of how to live our most aligned, authentic life and how to get there and what gets in the way of that. And I have so much that I want to share, and we're just going to see what wants to be shared in this particular moment of what will come through for us. The first thing that I want to talk about is a quote that I was reminded of yesterday as I was recording an episode of my Grocery Adventure podcast. And that quote is by Marcus Aurelius: the level of happiness that we have is determined by the quality of our thoughts. And that is so potent, such potent medicine, considering that in our Western culture, especially the consumer culture, says when you have the big house, then you'll be happy. When you get promoted, then you'll be happy. When you finally have a family of your own, then you'll be happy. And how many times have you personally gotten to those thresholds of life that you possibly wanted for a really long time, only to discover there's no there, right? Like there's no happiness in those events. And if there is, it's fleeting. It doesn't last very long before we're looking around like, okay, what else? Oh, well, I better get the new iPhone, then I'll be happy, right? Like we just pick something else outside of ourselves to want. And I love this quote by Marcus Aurelius that says, the level of our happiness is determined by the quality of our thoughts. That's where happiness comes from, is tuning our thoughts to things that bring us happiness. There's no external thing that we can get that will do it for us for the long haul, right? Those little rushes of happiness that come from acquiring the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Like there's a little bit of bump that can happen in those things, but day in and day out happiness is an inside job. So I wanted to start there and then share a little bit of my own story of like where I really learned that lesson. And this takes us back to July of 2016 when I had a powerful July of 2016. I'd have to look back at like exactly what was going on in the stars at that time, but things aligned. And there were two different things. Number one, I was in a romantic relationship where my internal insecurity was reaching an all-time high. I was going through jealousy and feeling like it was ripping me apart from the inside out. And every bit of me was telling me that like if he would be different, then I could feel better, right? And so let me try to control, let me try to get him to be how I need him to be so that I can feel the way that I want to feel. So that was happening. And simultaneously, I was also in the process of preparing for, studying for, training for, and getting my PMP certification, Project Management Professional. And so all of this happened within a few weeks where when I got the PMP, that process was so fun. I loved the learning. I loved the class that I went to. I even loved sitting for the 4-hour test. Like I like tests, I'm weird like that. But it was so freaking crazy when I actually got to the end of the test taking process and there's like a little submit button that's like you're going to get your results graded. It's like on a computer. So you're going to find out immediately if you passed, if you need to take it again, like whatever, you're going to get your results. And so I'm like all nervous and like, oh gosh, this is it. This is the moment. And so I finally like work up the courage to like press submit and find out my fate. immediately the next thing is like, hey, would you mind taking a quick 5-minute survey? And I'm like, I want to know how I did on this test. And so I'm like, hurry through the survey. And without even realizing it, I like bust forth onto the results page. And it was the smallest little thing that said, congratulations, you passed. Teeny exclamation point. And I was like, where's the parade? Where's the fireworks? Where's the feeling? Like, I did it. I passed. I had the goal. I met the goal. Like, why do I not feel more of a boost in this moment? Like, in my mind, getting that PMP certification, my project management professional certification, that was supposed to be like what took away the feeling of insecurity of like, okay, like now I have a PMP, like now I'm a real professional, like now I can feel confident and qualified, like to show up and do the work that I'm doing. And I didn't feel that way. I felt the same way that I felt 5 minutes before I pressed the submit button of like unsure and shaky and wishing that I felt more confident. I thought getting the certification was going to take care of all of that, and it didn't. That was like really the sinking in, like the lesson of like there is no there. Like we can chase the things outside of ourselves. We can put more letters behind our name and like we feel the same on the inside. And the other piece that was happening, like I said, simultaneously is like going through this romantic relationship where I was experiencing intense insecurity that was leading to jealousy that was like ripping apart the relationship. Very destructive force jealousy is. And that led me to, why not? Why not just be fully vulnerable here and claim what really happened? It led me to crying in a ball on my living room floor on Thursday and feeling like I don't want this life. I don't want it. And as it happens, we really don't get to trade our lives. Like you got the one you got. And so if you don't want that one, it's like I didn't want to be here at that point. And that's, not even the first time that I've felt that way of like I don't want to be here. I don't want this. And that scared me to feel that way, rightfully so, because I had been there staring into that abyss enough times to know that like what comes next, it's not any prettier. It only gets uglier from there of like really thinking about, I don't want to be here. And so I was fortunate to be in a metropolitan area in Dallas at the time and was able to reach out and find a therapist who was able to see me the next day. And so that was like my hanging on by a thread. Like, let me just get to her office. Like, I have less than 24 hours until she'll see me. So, like, let me go see her and maybe she has some miracle that she can work on my life. And turns out she did. Right? Like divine timing, right place, right time. When we will admit that I can't do this alone. The help is there. It's often just a matter of being willing to open up and accept that. And so fortunately, I went to see her. This is about 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. And I sit down with her in her very calming office and she's like, tell me about yourself. What brings you here? And so I start talking to, this is probably like the 10th therapist that I'd ever seen at that point. I'm about 27 years old. And I start to talk to her and she like is listening, but she has this epiphany. You could just see the light bulb go on above her head and she gets up and she's like, please keep talking, but I am going to grab something for you. And so I keep telling her and she sits back down and lets me finish. And then she hands me a piece of paper, one single sheet of paper. It has about 5 paragraphs on it. And she tells me, here, read this out loud. And at the top, it said deservability treatment. And I'm like, I've never even heard the word deservability, let alone know, like, what is a deservability treatment going to be? And I start reading it, and the first few lines are, I deserve good. I deserve all good. And it goes on from there about what you deserve, and it's beautiful things written there. It's technically what you would call an affirmation, where you're going to say this, and through repetition you're going to reprogram your subconscious beliefs about yourself by reading this deservability treatment. But the first time you read it, you're going to see a mirror reflection of how true do you think it is. And I knew in my bones, I knew in my stomach, I knew in the sick feeling in my stomach that none of this is true, right? And it's written on the paper, and she's sitting across from me telling me, as I'm bawling my eyes out, telling her I can't do this. She's like, yes, you can. Take your time and read the whole thing. And it took me a while to get through that first read through of the deservability treatment. It's by Louise Hay, by the way. You can Google it, find a free copy. And she sent me home with that deservability treatment and the homework assignment of read this out loud to yourself while looking at yourself in the mirror, like make eye contact with yourself and tell yourself these things. And I, being the person that I am and being as close to the edge as I was like, yes, I mean, I'll try anything to feel better. And so I read it in her office. I took it home. I read it to myself in the mirror a couple more times that evening and cried just as hard again through the feeling that, like, this is not true. I don't deserve good things. Like, I mean, it brought like a spotlight and shined a spotlight directly on how I was feeling about myself. And in there somewhere is I deserve love. And it was like in that moment of seeing that phrase of I deserve love, it was like all of a sudden the clouds parted and the sun shined, and I understood where my jealousy is coming from, right? Like, it's not a matter of anything that he's doing. He doesn't have to be any different. What needs to be different is that I would actually believe that someone could love me, right? Like, I was carrying around the belief that, like, of course he doesn't. He's just killing time waiting for the better person to come along. Like, this is truly what I believed deep down. Like, I wasn't thinking these things on a regular basis. I was so focused on trying to control him and his behavior. I wasn't ever really looking at, like, how did I feel about myself and how might that be contributing to this tumultuous relationship that I'm currently living. So between these two events, receiving the deservability treatment and being awarded or earning my PMP, my project management professional certification, I started to see that the things that are going on outside of us have so little to do with how we feel on the inside. That, like, if you've ever heard the line, happiness is an inside job, this is what they're talking about. Marcus Aurelius's quote of, like, the level of your happiness depends on the quality of your thoughts. And what I saw through the lens of the deservability treatment was my thoughts hate me. If you've ever heard the term self-talk, like, your self-talk matters. The things that you say to yourself of, like, I'm ugly, I'm fat, I am not good enough, I, could have done better. Like, these things that we tell ourselves on repeat to the point where they become so normalized that we don't even really see them. That's where I was until she handed me the deservability treatment. And then talk about a miracle getting worked on my life, because that deservability treatment, that one page, I took it home, I read it to myself out loud while looking at myself in the mirror, and I did it multiple times a day because it was so triggering and illuminating, like, all at the same time, that, like, even though it hurt to see, like, how far away believing these things actually were, like, I deserve all good. I mean, it took me weeks of reading the deservability treatment to start to even begin to believe that. And I still remember, I could, like, see my face in the mirror where, after reading it for several weeks of, like, multiple times a day, I had that sucker pretty much memorized. So I'm, like, mostly just telling it to myself in the mirror. I don't have to look down as much. And at that point, I'm looking at myself in the mirror and I got to one of the lines. It was in the second or the third paragraph. I forget which line it is exactly. But as I said it out loud, I smiled. And I can't really put into words that experience of going from every single line on that page felt like a dagger to my heart compared to a few weeks later, I read one of the lines or I said one of the lines and it legitimately made me smile. And why did it make me smile? Because I believed it and that thought felt good. That statement felt good. That claim that I was making by saying those words out loud, that felt good. And the shift of even just a few weeks of reading that deservability treatment and how it was altering how I felt about myself, it's like I'm a believer at this point that happiness is an inside job. Happiness is depending on the quality of your thoughts, period. There is nothing outside of us that can make us happy over the long term. Every bit of long-term happiness comes from how we feel about ourselves and how we feel about our life. And that is why practices like a gratitude list, like regularly counting the things that you are grateful for, even if there's repetition in that process, like I'm grateful to have a roof over my head. I'm grateful to have food in my fridge. I'm grateful to have money in my bank account. So when my cat's leg is all like wiggling around like it's made of noodles, I can take her to the vet and not even think twice about it. Like, go get her taken care of. Like, I'm grateful for so many things. And that doesn't mean that there's not room for what you wish was better. And that's what I want to leave us with here on this video, this installment, is like, one of the things that stands in our way of having the life of our dreams is telling ourselves and believing, like having the thoughts that you should be happy with what you have. Look at this, like you have a family, you have a house, you have food, like you should be grateful. And that should be the end of the story. And gratitude, like I said, huge, very important key to training your thoughts towards things that feel good. But at the same time, in order to have a life that you find truly fulfilling, you also have to be honest with yourself about what you know is missing. And even if it's to say, there's something missing, and I don't know what it is, but like, whatever I got here, like, I don't feel like this is all of it. And even just acknowledging the truth of, I feel like something is missing, is a huge step towards closing that gap. And this is what I do. This is like my full-time focus at this point, is to offer, like I mentioned on the last live, like I'm doing a free retreat that's happening March 16th through the 20th, where we'll be on Zoom, totally free, in a community space with other people who are wanting to develop their vision of what their authentic life even looks like, and chip away, work through the blocks and the limiting beliefs that are standing in the way of actually moving into living that. But I also have something that I offer called an activation session. And the goal of that is that you can see a clearer path forward from where you are, like real action steps that you can take to move yourself into alignment with whatever it is that you want to be living. And so if you showed up in one of these activation sessions and said something is missing, we would start right there with like, what is it that you feel like you have that's working for you? And what are the pieces that seem less than ideal to you? And then I would stop and I would wait for you to tell me, what do you feel? We're going to dive into your inner world and your feelings about yourself and your life. If that's something that you would like to do together, again, those activation sessions are available. I do them for free because I believe in this work. I believe in the value of what's possible when someone else can be there to not only reflect back to you, like, here's what I hear you saying. That process can be so valuable. But also like my therapist did for me all those years ago, of like, I hear what you're saying and it sounds like your deservability is like in the toilet, kind of deal. And like, here is a step of like, read this deservability treatment out loud to yourself in the mirror for 30 days and see how you feel. And so I may have advice of like practices like that. I may just have questions that might bring new pieces into the light that you can look at and then have more clarity around it and see what's really going on, right? Like, so often feeling happy on the inside, like, all that's needed is a tweak in your perspective, is a new thought to think instead of the old tired story that you have on repeat that's so normal that we hardly even see it. When you'll tell that story out loud to somebody else, like even just saying it out loud, whether anybody else is listening or not, is clarifying. So I'll go ahead and put the links to both the free retreat if you want to sign up for that, or the activation session, which is a one-on-one experience that happens in private. You get a recording of that so you can watch it back later. And maybe we shed some light on what's really going on. If you feel like your life is great, but you don't feel great inside of it, please know that there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. That I've been there. I still find myself there where I gotta like pick my energy up off the floor and like bring myself back to life, so to speak. It's a continual process. And if that's something that you're interested in, this is what I do. I would love to be there for you. If you want to reach out, you can also email me at owningauthenticity@gmail.com. I would love to be there to guide or reflect or whatever it is that you are ready for. Thank you so much for listening. It has been my pleasure to bring you yet another installment of living an authentic life and what gets in the way of that. Until next time, I hope you'll take really good care of yourself, and I'll see you soon. Okay, bye.